Well, yeah, I think that, we're trying to do so much. We're trying to have like a social media presence that takes a lot of time. And I see a lot of dietitians and I feel like they're giving away so much content. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm. Sure.
they're giving away, what's the hook? What's going to bring patients in? And is that the way you want to bring them in, or do you just want to provide content? So I feel like when I kind of plan the year and I try to look at the end of the year, like not just how much money did I make and my expenses, like did I allow myself enough time for continuing education, but skill building, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to RD's Thriving in Private Practice, where we share our collective wisdom about building a nutrition practice and get inspired. Joining me today is Judy Simon.
Hi, Catherine. I'm so happy to be here today. I love this group and I love this interface. What a great resource for all of us.
Well, I appreciate that feedback, and it's been a lot of fun for me too. So, let me give everyone an introduction about Judy here. Judy is a nationally recognized expert in reproductive nutrition and eating disorders with over 20 years of experience. As the owner of Mind Body Nutrition based in Seattle, Judy specializes in supporting individuals and couples navigating fertility challenges, managing PCOS, and recovery from eating disorders. Judy's professional contributions have garnered national acclaim. She co developed the Food for Fertility program and co authored a book, Getting to Baby, with Dr. Angela Thayer. Her leadership roles include serving as president of the Seattle Tacoma Reproductive Society and chair of the nutrition subinterest group of the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. Currently, she serves as the mentor coordinator for the Women's Health Dietetic Practice Group. In recognition of her impactful work, Judy received the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Excellence in Practice in Women's Health Award in 2014 and the Washington Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Community Practice Award for Excellence in 2017. Judy's work continues to inspire and inform practitioners in the fields of nutrition, fertility, and eating disorder recovery.
Thanks, Catherine. I guess when you're older, your bio gets longer, but it's really, really been a privilege. And, I've had a private practice. I think I'm going on 18 years. I don't know. It was like 2007, kind of around the time you did. And back then, I kind of felt like a pioneer. And I'm in Seattle area. I think there were like five of us that I knew, and probably now there's hundreds of private practice dietitians. So it's exciting to see how it's grown. And really, where I kind of came up with the idea, I had taken a break to have my kids. I was teaching at night, and I went back and I got this great job at the University of Washington working in family medicine. And what linked me into my niche of, PCOS and fertility is honestly my training was like zero on PCOS. I didn't even know what it was. And when I came back after, having kids and being out of work, out of, medical practice for a while, I started to work with women with PCOS, and I really connected with the reproductive endocrinologist at the medical center. And I remember feeling really lucky to work at the medical center. I still work there. I've been there 24 years. I was working in family med and loved it, loved the patients. But I kind of wanted more freedom. I wanted to like branch out on my own. And I was so lucky that I have a very great friend and colleague who's a solo practitioner, family medicine doctor here in Bellevue, Washington. And she kept saying, Judy, I have this office suite and I have an office that you can lease. And probably like a lot of others, I had that imposter syndrome like, could I just start a private practice?
Mhm.
And really, I just, the door was open for me. So that's kind of, from the very beginning. And I was really fortunate that the fertility doctors I was working at, a whole group of them left the university, started the largest private practice in the Pacific Northwest, and they're like, hey, we need a dietitian for our fertility patients too. So it kind of all came together. And I feel just really fortunate to have that start. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I think sometimes we either forget or downplay the importance of the role of luck and having opportunities come at the right time and just being in the
Hmm.
right place at the right time and saying
Hmm.
yes at the right time. That's it's an important factor in often in just getting started or in growing or building our own practices. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, luck and opportunity. And it was sort of a new thing that dietitians, this is 18, 20 years ago, were branching. And I didn't jump into it right away. So I was really lucky that my colleague, physician friend, she goes, okay, Judy, because I thought money, I had small children. I worked, a point 6 job. So I wasn't going to quit that job, but I had those other 2 days available to me. And I know one of the things you talk about is, well, what are the startup costs? What's the opportunity? What are the risks? So I was really lucky that she told me, the first, I don't know what it was, 3 to 6 months, I'm not even going to charge you rent. I want you to get your feet wet. So that took a lot of the pressure off. I made the decision, and I don't regret it. I decided not to take insurance. So I have a cash practice. Now, I am fortunate in the region I live in. We have a lot of tech companies, and in the past, it changes a lot. The reimbursement was so high for out of network medical nutrition therapy that I thought, okay, I'll try that out. I'll try out that model and see how it goes. And some of my colleagues, they were doing both. Some were doing insurance, some were doing it. But I did network immediately with the private practice dietitians in the area because we all kind of said, like, oh, you're going to do that? Great. I can send these patients to you. And I go, you're doing this area? And so I always say, your dietitian colleagues in private practice, they're your team, they're your club, they're your sister brotherhood, whoever they are, because if you work together, you're going to get referrals from them. And that's what I found over the years. Sometimes I'll ask a patient, like, oh, how did you find out about me? And they'll say, oh yeah, this dietitian said you're great with fertility, and they referred you to me. And I do the same with them. When I started seeing less patients with eating disorders, I knew who to send them to. I knew
Mhm.
the colleagues. Plus, I work with so many graduate students that I've trained. I know the wonderful ones that are now in private practice. I know how strong their skill set is, and that's who I'll send, people I don't have room to see. So I think working with your team of other dietitians, and then, day one, you have to think about, was anybody going to show up? If I'm not taking insurance and I'm not, I didn't use, I use the Academy website, where you're listed, and some of our local things, and that always got a few patients. But what I really did is I reached out to therapists in the eating disorder world because I was seeing them. And even if they said to me, like, oh, I already have a dietitian, I go, that's okay. I need to know the therapist. So I need to know who to send to. We made alliances, which was really great, which was a referral source. But I've always been very fortunate to primarily work with fertility clinics and OBGYN clinics. And some of the marketing that I did is I always offered like lunch and learn talks. Like, hey,
Mhm.
can I do an educational program? I didn't always have all the doctors, but I would have the nurses and the nurse practitioners and the MAs, and they loved it. I'd for years and years, I've done these lunchtime talks on different topics that were timely. And then, like the next week, all these new referrals would come in. Like it was kind of a constant, source of referrals. And so that was really helpful. But what I had to do is I had to go join their professional groups. So, for example, one of the first things I did, because fertility is my interest, is I got involved in our local area group that we had, the Seattle Tacoma group, but I joined the National American Society for Reproductive Medicine. And in fact, the first national meeting I went to, and it was like about 2011 or something in Orlando, I was speaking the first day with one of my colleagues, my co author, Angela Thayer, and I'd never been to the conference. So can you imagine walking into a room with, like, I don't know, 500 fertility doctors, no dietitians, and I'm speaking on, nutrition and fertility with a pretty renowned doctor. And that was just the start of it. I got involved in their nutrition subgroup, took a leadership role. And then on the academy side, one of the groups that helped me back then, because remember, we were much smaller percentage than of private practice practitioners, was I was involved somewhat in Nutrition Entrepreneurs, DPG. And they had a lot of tools, like what do you do, like to start a practice 101. This is before social media. We didn't have all the social media back 18 years ago. So, and we weren't even really doing websites right away, right? So it was really like boots to the ground. You had to go meet doctors, do meetings. So a lot more of that, writing letters, following up, having coffees. And so the first year I had 1 day a week. And by the second year, I had so many patients. I took the second day, and then really you know, um, my lease was like, you can use the office whenever you want. So if I wanted to use it nights or weekends, so I have a lot of flexibility at a reasonable cost. And then because my niche was fertility patients, and I was getting so many referrals for PCOS, I was probably one of the first people in Seattle that I know of that was, providing this service as a dietitian. I was very fortunate. And then I decided to start my food for fertility cooking classes
Mhm.
along under Angela Thayer. So I really didn't have a model for this, Catherine. I'm also my master's is in health education, so that's a love of mine. And I kept meeting these women. I go, oh my gosh, I have to start classes, right? So we did. And I started these 6 to 7 week classes, Saturday mornings, and I literally used the employee break room for the first 5 years of a fertility clinic. They donated the space. They marketed for me because they love that they could offer this at their clinic, but I kept the payment separate, and they love that. So
Mhm.
in order for the women to be in the class, they had to see me for at least an initial visit. Okay. So I had a new patient, and then they paid the fee upfront for all of the classes.
Mhm.
And I got all my marketing done for me. They would make brochures. And then once we had social media, they would market it on social media. So I never had trouble getting people for the class, and they let people come from other clinics. And basically, what we would do every week is instead of telling women, eat healthfully, we did it. We
Right.
cooked. And it's amazing what you can cook with minimal equipment. And then eventually, because the class was so successful, when they redid their employee workroom, they put in a whole kitchen. I had this gorgeous kitchen for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years up until COVID that we would use. I would bring in yoga instructors. I had graduate students help me with the classes. And then we would always walk at the end of the class. We did intuitive eating, goal setting, cooking. And then we would, no matter what the weather was, rain or shine in Seattle, we would take a 30-minute walk. And that was the community part. And
Mhm.
then I also had ongoing monthly classes for the women while they were working on their fertility journey. That changed over to a virtual format with COVID. We all learned how to cook in our kitchens and teach classes, which had advantage for the women. I had women from Alaska then and from further away. And then that's when Angela and I said, wow, we've helped so many women with lifestyle get pregnant, even being able to avoid expensive treatments like IVF because we help them with lifestyle. And we collected their stories over the years, and we collected the recipes. And that's what gave us the idea like, we are going to write a book
Mhm.
because we can either help 12 people a class, or we can like take the whole class, all the successes from it, put it in a book. And I hope it's on everybody's library. And if you haven't yet read Getting to Baby, please ask your local library to carry it. My goal, I would be more excited if every single library had a copy of it so that we could reach more people that with a nutrition, food first approach. And that's really been probably one of the capstones of my career. And I've talked a lot, so I should probably let Catherine take it. But I just wanted to kind of give you a background that while I
Mhm.
was seeing patients, all day long on Mondays and Tuesdays, I was doing these classes on Saturdays and had a family and another job
I
and wrote.
know. I
It was
know.
a lot.
It's
It was a
like
lot.
it's mind blowing to me that the I, so a few things. One is that it
Mm,
sounds like because you had so much support from
mhm,
the facility that was helping
Yes.
host and market the
Yes.
classes. You've had someone offer the space at
Hmm.
cost, right?
Hmm. It's very
And
affordable. My rent is very affordable. Yep.
yeah. And then, early on, we're really able to establish yourself as somebody who is an expert in your niche, in your field, right? And
Hmm.
so being able to build on there
Hmm.
sort of seems like the activation energy to get things started was already, it's like you're already in perpetual motion, right?
Yeah, and I'm really proud to say, and I think a lot of us imposter syndrome don't think we can be successful in business and it's going to take years. I was always in the black. I never had to take out loans. I've always lived within my means. You know what I mean? And I think my highest income producing year was actually the first year when we switched to all virtual with COVID, because a lot of the fertility doctors, they had to shut down on procedures with COVID. And they're like, well, you could go see the dietitian and get healthy in the meantime. And I mean, I just saw, so people were baking sourdough bread, and I was seeing a lot of patients and then doing virtual classes and working on the book. So, I mean, that was a really high revenue producing year. And I think the beauty of having a private practice is like when I still had kids in high school and they had swim meets, I could be like, nope, no patients after 4. If I wanted to do evening appointments, the flexibility has been a true joy for me, that I can be as busy as I want to be. If I want to see 8 patients a day, I can. If I want to see, oh my gosh, today I think I have 6 and 2 podcasts, a podcast and a live. It's really, but I got to go to the gym and walk my dog, because I had that flexibility that you don't always have in a, 8 to 4, clinic job. I have the flexibility to do these things. And I put a lot of time into professional involvement too, giving webinars for American Society of Reproductive Medicine. And I think when you have a niche, and this is what I try to tell my students, because a lot of them want to start a private practice right after school, and after school, you know what I mean, when they're done and they're credentialed. And I'm like, build up your relationships, build up with. I think I've been able to be successful because I have just always been out there going to conferences that don't have any dietitians and being the one talking about nutrition. And if there's other people talking about nutrition, naturopaths and all, I'll partner with them. I just ask people like, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast and talk about my book. And they're like, great. And we talk about all the things we have in common, right? So don't think of these people like you're like, why is a naturopath talking about nutrition? If they're saying good stuff about nutrition, I'm on board.
Yeah.
Let's be partners. And then we end up sending each other patients. It's a win-win. So I really think partnerships, working within who's in your, like our Dietetic Association. We're going to do a book club on my book, in the spring. Reaching out, and I've mentored a lot of students who want to work in this area. Another dietitian in my area was one of my graduate students. She worked on food for fertility, and now she has a practice, with fertility. I don't feel like that's competition. I feel like it's
Right.
great. If I've trained them and they're going out and doing good work, I am thrilled. That's what I want to see. I'm always happy to mentor other dietitians.
Yes, what you're saying about rather than seeing other dietitians or people of other specialties as competition, which, frankly
Mhm,
can be easy to do because
mhm,
there's a
mhm.
lot of encroachment on our field
Yes,
and sort of
yes,
feel protective, like, oh,
mhm,
you're taking
mhm.
away my patients or my clients.
Yes,
But what you're saying is transform those into collaborators,
absolutely.
right? Because we
Collaborate.
all have something different to share in our respective fields and niches.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even with even when I feel like I've done so much less marketing, like I haven't been doing nearly the amount of lunch and learns. I have the reputations amongst the doctors I work with. I reach out when they have new doctors in their practice. I'll send them a note. I'll tell them about my services or tell them about the book. And I don't know, as long as the phone keeps ringing and the emails and the requests, I feel like really fortunate that I'm still staying, really, really busy. I mean, the shortcomings, I wish I was a little quicker at social media. I keep thinking, oh, I need to post this. I need to post it. So that's one of the things that when students reach out to me and they're like, hey, can I do some things? I want to be involved. I'm like, oh, I need to just hand over social media. And I'm really impressed with the private practice dietitians who aren't afraid to give up some of their stuff. Like they hire virtual assistants. I mean, my 31-year-old tells me all the time, Mom, you should have a publicist during your social media
Mm.
because you're not as quick at it. You make mistakes. Sometimes they're funny, when I post something and I didn't mean to, when it goes out on Instagram, whatever. But some of the things that I just don't have the bandwidth for,
Mhm.
that's when we need to say it's okay to ask for help
Right.
or to hand off those things. I mean, I pretty much do, when I started, of course, I used an attorney and an accountant because, I wanted to make sure everything was separate from my home accounts. And whenever someone tells me they're starting a practice, I'm like, do you have your business license? Did you do all this stuff? You need to spend the money to talk to an accountant. You need to know you're setting things up to protect yourself
Mhm.
and your business. You need to have liability insurance. Now, these are things you can't skirt on and figure out, what your costs are going to be. And one of the things I've learned from the newer, younger dietitians is like, I was so busy during COVID, like I shortened my time, but I hadn't raised my rates in a while. And I started seeing what private practice dietitians were charging, like, I'm like, my God, they have 3 years of experience. I have decades. And,
Mhm.
and even one of my colleagues, when I said, goes, Judy, raise your raise. And I did a significant jump, but I felt like it stayed in with what our community, what people charge for out of network. Not one patient batted an eye. And I
Mhm.
was like, wow, that just gave my whole income. Like, we have to give ourselves raises,
Right. I
not
think
just
that
see more patients, right? We have to give ourselves raises. We earn them.
Mhm. I think we underestimate what the market is willing to bear, especially in a niche like what you're doing. Like you're
Hmm.
helping parents conceive,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That's priceless, really,
Yes,
right?
yes. And a lot of patients have avoided IVF. Not that
Mhm.
IVF is a bad thing,
Sure.
but if they're willing to take the time, or they've been more successful as a result. They've had a better egg retrieval. They've had better
Mhm.
success. I mean, I work with surrogates, and I don't know if you're all aware how much money a couple has to pay a surrogate to carry a child if the woman is unable to or for whatever reason. It's so much money. We're a drop in the bucket of those expenses. So
Mhm.
when I do surrogates, I realize, ooh, that takes a little bit more time. I'm talking to the intended parent and the doctor or whatever. So I really increase those fees and nobody bats an eye because like you're an expert and and I think even when we are asked to speak publicly, every time I ask a higher amount, I almost always get an okay. Not so much from the professional groups, they usually have like a set amount unless you're the keynote or something like that. But that's the prestige, when you're at a like today's dietitian. I've spoken at Fancy 3 times that really get your name out there, your expertise out there. But when you're doing something, more local and somebody is asking you to speak, I'm like, oh, what's the rate? What's the going rate? And am I getting, I have like a minimum or it's not worth it. I
Right.
don't, want to put my time in. And that's what I ask my colleagues, what are you charging for a workshop or what are you charging for this? Kind of see what the
Mhm.
market will bear and make sure that we're getting um, what
We're
we
getting
earn, what we
compensated.
deserve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And
Yes.
one thing which I want to ask to if this is true for you,
Mhm.
but with hosting workshops or giving
Mhm.
talks, if it's
Mhm.
something that you've done before and you're maybe adjusting it a little bit for the audience, but you're sort of
Oh, yes.
reimagining something
Yes.
that you've done a
And you
number
know
of
what,
times.
Catherine? That's such a good point. If
Mhm.
you have an expertise, like last year, I was on a big run on uh, taking the topic of diabetes for women throughout their reproductive life. So preconception, diabetes during, prior to pregnancy, gestational diabetes, postpartum. And I gave that talk in like 4 different versions last year. And So by the last time when I spoke to WIC dietitians at a state meeting in a training, um, I could meet all their criteria. You had all the references, and plus I'd given the talk. I just had to tweak it. So you're right. Instead of doing a million different topics, get really good on a few of them, market them. So even when I'm getting ready to do these next two talks, I'm not starting from scratch. I'm building, and then I teach. So I have those. Those, and I get to try them out. Those talks. On the students. I train the residents, didactics in a lot of different areas, intuitive eating, menopause. So, right, so build on that. It's your material. Go ahead, give a talk and, give webinars, and you can get paid, quite well on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, since you've been in practice for so long, what are some of the, right? So what are, we could go back to the very beginning and talk about those initial steps, but they're not going to be as relevant to now. And so
They
stuff
are.
has
Yeah.
changed. And more the question I'm asking is, what sort of inner resources do you need to call upon to be able to know when to pivot well and easily, make the changes that are necessary to keep up with the changes in the market, in the needs of your patients, changes to the profession itself, new
Mhm.
technology that's coming in,
Yeah.
all of these other private equity-based dietitian companies that are coming in,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
what are some of the sort of your inner resources that you've had to call upon, and what are you seeing now as things that we need to look out for?
Well, yeah, I think that, we're trying to do so much. We're trying to have like a social media presence. That takes a lot of time. And I see a lot of dietitians and I feel like they're giving away so much content. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm. Sure.
they're giving away, what's the hook? What's going to bring patients in? And is that the way you want to bring them in, or do you just want to provide content? So I feel like when I kind of plan the year and I try to look at the end of the year, like not just how much money did I make and my expenses, like did I allow myself enough time for continuing education, but skill building, right? I keep saying like, oh my gosh, AI, chat GBT. I am so behind in that. So I'm starting to just play around like, hey, Judy, these are tools that can actually be really helpful and be really accessible. So kind of deciding like, I need to put a few hours a week into my own CE, my own career development, my own marketing. And if I can pack my schedule with patients and fill up every slot, but I'm going to feel disappointed if I don't do that self-assessment and be able to continue to grow in ways. And I think that's where collaborations like what you have, like I love dietitians in private practice. I can just throw out a question and say, hey, and I'll get a lot of different thoughts and ideas. So I think that I try to stay up with where am I going to get the best continuing ed for the best value.
Mhm.
I know some people have felt very successful using business coaches,
Mhm.
and I feel like I haven't had to do that because I was a little bit more homegrown, and I don't want to grow anymore. Some people really want to make it like this is my very huge income. I chose not to hire other people. Probably someday I'll sell my practice, but right now, probably what'll happen is I'll probably give up my university practice because I get a very nice, one thing about having a second job is there's my benefits. I have pension. I get continuation funding. I get a ton of vacation. I mean, I have a lot of benefits that I have gotten from that. And I've gotten so much knowledge. And that's where I've gotten a lot of my connections too. So sometimes when I see people, I'm like, you can do both. And you can work half time and get benefits if you're satisfied. You
Mhm.
you really can. That's why someone just asked me to speak at this World Endometriosis Conference on a webinar was through, academic connections. Do you know what I mean? So that, use what you can. But I feel like things are going fast. We have to keep up with technology. But I think you have to step back and still say, like, how much do I want to grow? Do I want to be a cozy little practice? Or do I want to hire 8 dietitians? I see
Right.
a lot of groups too. Or do I want to work for a group?
Right. There are so many little decisions to make
Yes.
from, do I take insurance? Do I do cash pay? Am I a solopreneur? Do I hire even contract employees, not necessarily other dietitians, but the VA
Yeah.
or scheduler or an insurance biller or whatever, right? So many of these tiny little decisions. And then how do I want to grow? Or is it okay for me to depend on sort of a 50-50 split where I've got this job that I really enjoy that's giving me really great benefits, maybe not all the freedom that a full private practice might, but there's a lot of pressure taken off when, your benefits are being taken care of and you get your vacation time paid for, right? That's
Right, right. It's
pretty
both.
sweet deal, right?
And it's funny because sometimes when I just took off a couple of days, I was just in California, you give her 2 private practice days, that's a lot of money. And sometimes I
Mhm.
think of it in number of patients, like, wait, you need some vacation, you have to make sure that you take that time off. But one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the way I've set up my private practice is that, like, for example, my patients get an invoice and they know the relationship with me is I collect at the time of service. So I expect that day, and usually I can look at it at night. I look at my square payments, and I've received all the payments for all the services I provided that day. And I've really enjoyed that. I feel like I work hard, I'm there, I'm available for my patients, I'm a little more concierge because of that. I don't book, a lot of people will do these 30-minute, get to know you things. I'll take a quick call, but usually it's a quick email, a text. I make it a 5-minute phone call.
Mhm.
I don't want to spend all my time booking those kind of appointments, and I can kind of get right to the meat of it if I'm a good fit for them. If I'm not, I'll say, yeah, there's other options, that you can do. So that's kind of where I am in my growth. I mean, at one time, I thought about, maybe one day I want to train more dietitians and develop some workshops. That's one idea, like kind of using, the getting to baby format. We
Mhm.
were so successful in our classes. We occasionally do some pop-ups, but I kind of decided I wanted my weekends back.
Right.
So, we'll do some occasional pop-ups, but I did a lot of years of Saturday classes and, I'm like, kind of want my time back, but I'm ready to think, well, maybe one of the things we'll do is we'll train other dietitians, and I would love for them to use this format because it's been so successful and evidence-based.
Yeah, yeah. We're getting to the end of our
Yes.
time, but we've gotten to talk about so many great things. I really wanted to hear a little bit about your book writing process. And it sounds
Oh, thanks.
like, first of all, having a method, a formula, something that you're putting into book format sounds like that was sort of an easy yes. But the question that I want to ask you is, if someone, in our audience has an
Mhm.
idea for a book, what kind of suggestions or encouragement would you give them for where to start, how to go about getting that process even started?
Yeah, well, I was really lucky that my co-author, Angela Thayer, she's like this amazing physician who's like triple board certified and always growing. I mean, just always growing in so many ways. She's even a vegan chef, all kinds of stuff. So she really got the writing bug. Like, I love the idea, but she really had the writing bug. And she took a lot of like affordable like writing courses, like
Hmm.
just how do you write that proposal and pitch? And literally, she was at a workshop, she pitched her idea. There was a number of agents, and like 3 agents were like, this is a great idea for a book. So we kind of went that route where she had done a lot, but I don't know if people realize how much work is. It's like when you have full-time working people writing a book on top of everything else they're doing and doing workshops. It probably took us over a year to even write our proposal. And so having an agent to kind of help out, like, what do you need, especially if you're using a publisher. We did not self-publish. We used Ben Bella, an amazing, and they work with a lot of dietitians, like they love dietitians. So that was a good in. So having an agent who could do that, but we worked on the proposal, we showed the book proposal. That book changed so many times. And then once you have a proposal, you have an agent, you get a contract, with a publisher. We had a year, a little over a year to write the whole book. We had the beginning of it, and it takes that much time. Remember, there was recipes, there was so much in there. There's over 300 citations. I mean, this is very evidence based. Um, You hand it in, you get about a month off, and your amazing editor kind of rips it to shreds and goes, it's way too long. Like they kind of know what sells for this genre of book, right? And then you kind of spend the next year rewriting it.
Yeah.
So if you're writing with someone else, they have to be a partner you can work with. And honestly, Angela loves writing. So she was the lead writer, but that didn't mean I wasn't, always writing and working. And I did a lot more on the recipes and the nutrition part.
Mm-hmm.
And she put together the rest. And then really, you have to be able to take critical feedback from people when they read it. Like, what is it missing? And we were really lucky with all those connections I had academically that when you look and see, I have, a Harvard professor, Jorge Chavarro, who did the original fertility and nutrition research. He's on the back of our book because I've been on committees with him and I've done workshops with him. And we have dietitians that are really renowned, like Angela Grassi in the PCOS world and Rachel Malik and lots of great people. But we had a lot of physicians, even the doctor who was the president of ASRM. So we really got some heavy hitters to endorse our book, to give us feedback. But I would say, if you want to write a book, talk to other authors and really know the time that you're going to put it, and you're not doing it for money, you're doing it because you really want to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important to you to get that information out. And kudos to dietitians who are authors. We talked about doing a follow-up cookbook, but right now I'm like busy promoting this book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I hope all of you, we even tell people that this book, besides being great for fertility, honestly, if you just skip the fertility chapter, it's just great on nutrition, culinary skills, recipes, meal planning, all the skill building that we learned in the classes, putting in a book is really, really helpful. And I love when I see new patients that are like, yeah, I just read your book and I'm doing this. So it's kind of like a real thrill for me. Or they'll say like, oh, that story you had about Audrey, I totally connected to that person's story. And I loved doing the recordings of interviewing people that had went through our classes. That was really fun.
Really wonderful. Well, I will make sure that the San Francisco Public Library has at least
Thank you.
and maybe pick up a copy for myself.
Oh,
Just
please
to
do.
have some information, like you said, with the meal planning and the culinary skills.
Yes.
That could be, really useful for my clientele too. So I don't work with.
Absolutely. Yeah, take a look at it and see. It's so readable. I mean, my whole family's read it. And my kids, make recipes and I'm, as far as I know, working and getting pregnant right now. But yeah, it's a great book. And, please reach out to me. I'm on this group. I'm very active in our Facebook group.
Mhm.
I'm at Fertile Nutrition. I would love for everyone to follow me on Instagram. Mind Body Nutrition is my website. But I really do try to mentor and help other dietitians that are really interested in reproductive health and nutrition. We need more dietitians out there with the expertise. We are the experts.
Yeah.
But you really have to understand fertility. You can't start seeing these patients until you kind of understand fertility 101 because you will be an imposter. You really have to know the content.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think that we really do need to, if it's not currently in our scope, broaden our scope and do the work.
Broaden your scope.
Learn, right?
And I'm happy to share with dietitians how to do that. It's not that hard.
Mhm.
And it's such a rewarding field to help people build families. I love it. I love it every day.
Great. So we're at the end of our time, and I will summarize this by saying just a few words that are sticking out to me: collaboration, connection, community, and really paying attention to that personal development, professional development, and growth that we're alluding to time and time again here. So thank you so much, Judy.
Oh, thank you, Catherine.
Today. This is really special. Really nice to have
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I look forward to continuing to throw questions to this group because you're so helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Always learning.
Yeah.